Alright, what's up? Back at it with another video. The news cycle is moving very thick and fast. We are fresh off a weekend of Freedom Day commemorations and the singing of the Kill the Boer song, and now the mainstream media, TV, is starting to catch up on it, and they've put together a panel for us to discuss what exactly this is about. Ronaldo hosts, I hope you're watching. And this is at 1.2x speed, if you're wondering why they're talking kind of fast.
All right, let's get into our discussion for the evening. EFF leader Julius Malema has once again sparked...
And by the way, I won't be commenting on this one. I'm just here to watch. I haven't watched this. I'm not prepared. There's a panel of experts and I'll let their expertise speak. Let's chill.
Debate, especially on social media. This is after he sang the controversial anti-apartheid song Kill the Boer at a Sharpeville commemoration recently. And this is despite threats of personal sanctions against him from the United States and criticism from those accusing him of inciting violence against a group of people. But for more on this conversation, we're joined by political analyst Professor Lisiba Tefo. We're also joined by historian Professor Pitika Ntuli. We've got legal expert Benedict Phiri, as well as international relations expert Professor Otto. Thank you so much to our guests, and we really, really appreciate all of your time. Professor Tefo, I do want to start with you because I think that from a political analysis point of view, there really is a lot to talk about. The timing, certainly, of seeing a party like the EFF, a leader like Julius Malema, singing, Kill the Boer. This is, of course, at the human rights celebrations in Sharpeville just last week. I mean, let's talk a little bit about what comes to mind first about the significance of that song in its history and where we are now.
Greetings to you and the viewers. At the outset, let me just state that unequivocally, I'm a proponent and a supporter of the values that undergird the Constitution of the Republic of South Africa, namely social cohesion, nation building, and reconciliation. Once upon a time, there was a man by the name of Nelson Mandela. And there was another fellow by the name of Peter Mokaba. He kept on singing, kill the Boer, kill the farmer, kill the farmer, kill the Boer. Mandela, in his authoritative way, and this is not what people want to talk about, by the way, because it's disconcerting or uncomfortable, but this is a time now to at least recall that. He said to Peter unequivocally, if you are not going to stop singing this song, maybe it's time, young man, you go and form your own party. And for about 4 months, Peter avoided, either in person or otherwise, to meet the old man. What am I saying? That we have a nation we want to build, a society we want to craft. And the founding fathers were about that. And they came up with this document and said, in this, we shall strive for reconciliation, nation building, and social cohesion. Our fractured path notwithstanding. All right? Our fractured path notwithstanding. Now, given that there was a judgment that gave him that the interpretation and so on, that is fine. We concede, we accept that. But I think as a leader, he should be sensitive and responsive to the call on the ground. We want to fashion a society whereby we, black and white, we can live together.
That's an interesting take about, even, I suppose, where the debate of the song has begun, and certainly is not just a current one. But what do you say then, Professor Tefo, to those that say, well, there is still an emotional attachment that perhaps black South Africans may very well have to the song, Kill the Boer, the emotional attachments to the struggle, the sense of nostalgia, the commitment, what that song is a reminder of when it speaks to the commitment of fighting racialism, for instance. So when that argument is brought to bat, and we're not going to get into the legal element of it, and Benedict Phiri certainly will help us with that a little bit later on. But what do you say to those that argue the nostalgia, Prof?
Incidentally, I lived and experience apartheid. It is those that had read and got it mediated to them that tend to want to give us lectures. We are not the first to be colonized under the sun, but many nations have moved on. Even the so-called Asian tiger. Can we not be beholden to the past? Be mindful of it, but look at where we are. People want bread, pap and fleece, safety and security. People want jobs. And anything that is inimical to these things that I'm mentioning and that people are desirous of, I'm sure when it matters most, they will say, you cannot be one of us or you cannot be our leader. And one way or another, that message was conveyed in May 2024.
There is, of course, the fear that the song and the singing of this chant, for instance, is seen as a call to action to say to South Africans, go and kill the Boer. And I'm keen to hear what you make of that interpretation as it comes from the likes of Marco Rubio, Elon Musk and such.
Why do we need singing this song in this era? Why do we? You know what? You can call Rubio and mention him. That's fine. But I know for a fact that almost more than 20,000 people have already lost their jobs because of certain things that Elon said or Trump said. And the merits and the demerits thereof, I'm not so much interested. I'm more interested in us appreciating that we have a society to build and play not into the hands of those who would bring undesirable consequences. And those consequences may not necessarily be borne by. We're sentimental. I understand that, but I'm not romantic. I'm a realist. I'm a pragmatist. I have this fractured past, but I don't want to be beholden to it. I'm looking at the now in order to fashion a better tomorrow for the benefit of posterity. Right. I lived under apartheid. I don't need to be lectured on that. Anybody who's 40 and below knows very little or almost nothing except through mediated knowledge or information.
This man doesn't want you to be telling him about apartheid, crying on his behalf. He says he knows it himself, and having lived through it, he says no to the song, Kill the Boer, Kill the Farmer.
By any form of structure. And these are the people in the main who sing and dance and want to give us lecture. Yes, I appreciate that they know, but they're too young to be beholden to that. Their peers are moving ahead. And incidentally, it's only blacks. I see no colors, no Indians, no whites. And they were part of the struggle, even the whites, by the way. And their children too, and the sacrifices made. Donald Trump may not support us, but the people of America supported us. And let's try to find a way to work with the people of America. Because Donald Trump will come and Donald Trump will go, but America will remain. Tefo will come and Tefo will go, but South Africa will remain. Harmonious coexistence, guided and informed and undergird that by the values that undergird our constitution, nation building, reconciliation, and social cohesion. Yes, I may sound romantic, but the founding fathers and even Nelson Mandela did call Peter to order. And I know, yes, I know him even at a personal level. And thanks to Winnie Mandela, because he probably could have been given a proper funeral. But I don't want to go there. Those who know him closely and how his life ended, right? He's now eulogized, but he was disowned by his own once upon a time.
Professor Lisiba, for the political analyst, thank you so much for your time. Of course, we do have with us as well Professor Pitika Ntuli, a cultural expert and analyst, as well as a historian. Professor Ntuli, an absolute pleasure having you on the show this evening. I mean, this is quite a debate. To Professor Tefo, they're talking about how he says, I lived during apartheid. I know the significance of the song, and you certainly did as well, having spent time in exile as well, as someone who is, also an expert in cultural expression, certainly of South Africans. What does the song ring to you in present day South Africa, and certainly what it does when you compare it to what it did 31 years ago and more?
I think, Professor Tefo and I, on this particular issue, speak, through the same, mouth. I also agree that Julius Malema had no business, in a sense, to provoke. But I want to contextualize this. We are already on the bad light of, Trump, himself. We took up his good friends, the Israelis, to the ICJ, and that in itself is rattling, rather very badly. But I also want to raise another question. Why this song actually in particular? We had other songs that were equally, heavy. When people are angry, like we say, we will shoot them with our guns. We're expressing our hopes, expressing, our frustrations, knowing very clearly that we are fighting, racists. We are not fighting, white people. Just like in Israel, not all Jews are Zionists. Not all South Africans, were racists. So there are many other songs that had been actually sung, but there are contexts in which, when we decide to remember what we went through, and we want to celebrate what we went through, then some of these songs would come, not because we are aiming at attacking other people on it. I have a poem I've written here to to Trump. That Trump cannot come up trying to steal, our cousins when we are busy here making our life, building our life, as Tefo had said, and living, together with each other and making sense of who we are. So we should do not, therefore, be given any red herrings that the Trumps, the Elon Musks, and all of them are going to be, pursuing. I think. The example that Madiba, did on, Peter Mukaba is an absolutely telling one. There can be no better story, than that. Here is somebody respected all by the world, went in and called this young man to order and said, no, hatred is no longer what we really need in this country, but building, this, country in a way in which we're all going to live together as, Professor Tefo, has actually articulated. I go along very well with that.
Of course, Professor, and to our other guests, certainly to our viewers, we did, of course, reach out to the economic freedom fighters, inviting them to be a part of this discussion, and they were not able to confirm and allocate someone to be part of this discussion, but we did invite them to be part of it. Benedict, perhaps you can help us with this, and we've got Professor Pitika to take us through, the cultural and sort of the nuances of the song, which I think is really, really important, and certainly what it means for the future of South Africa as the world looks on. But there is the legal conversation, Benedict. I mean, there's the fact that Kali Kriel of the EFF, of the AfriForum, Kali Kriel of AfriForum, being quite outspoken in taking issue with the court's handling of the matter of the chant, Kill the Boer, ruling that it is not considered as hate speech. Talk to us about some of that rationale and legally where it leaves us where the chant is concerned.
Thank you, Naledi. Good evening, and good evening to the viewers as well as my fellow guests. It's very interesting because AfriForum lost to the EFF at the Supreme Court of Appeal and Mr. Julius Malema, when they tried to have this declared as hate speech by the courts. And the court, they actually did something interesting. It actually went through the history of the song and how the song came about, what it was used, as to show protest against, and then it went into a much more detailed assessment of when it is sung by Mr. Malema at an EFF rally, as part of the message that the EFF projects as a political party for their political ends, then it really shouldn't be a problem, as much as it may be offensive to one or two people. But ultimately, a reasonably informed person, as the court calls it, would be able to see that this is Mr. Malema doing this for the political ends of the EFF. And it cannot be taken to then translate to an incitement to harm that particular section of society. So that's where the SCA took us. And Mr. Kriel didn't, and AfriForum, they didn't appeal this to the Constitutional Court. And I think that should be a question that should be asked of them, because for me, that was quite solid reasoning, because I think we all understand in that context, when we see Mr. Malema there, that he really isn't inciting hatred. Yes, the view may not be palatable to all of us, but when you take the history of the song as an affront to the system, and the fact that currently that system is actually still the same, there may be a place when you are an EFF for you to be able to express, your views against the system and the oppression that is still felt through songs like that, and for them to be understood in their proper context, no matter how inflammatory they are.
At the same time, though, you do have on X this tweet that comes from the U.S. Secretary of State, and it reads from Secretary Marco Rubio, "Kill the Boer is a chant that incites violence. South Africa's leaders and politicians must take action to protect Afrikaner and other disfavored minorities. The United States is proud to offer those individuals who qualify for admission to our nation amid this continued horrible threat of violence." So, Professor Otto, help us out here, because we can certainly speak about what the law says around the chant of Kill the Boer, and then there's the nostalgia and the history of it, but how the world views it is a completely different thing. So from a diplomatic point of view, what are you seeing there?
Well, I think this is obviously not the first time that this chant has, been invoked in our domestic politics or brought some sort of discord within our domestic politics. In that sense, it's not really new. Of course, it does play into the US narrative at the moment, with us really not being particularly the flavor of the month in Washington. If you know something about South Africa, you also know that it speaks to Malema's brand of politics. And so I think there's perhaps also questions about the extent to which there is an understanding of the South African context within Washington and particularly within this Trump administration. At least conversations that I've had with colleagues in the United States indicate that there isn't much understanding and perhaps also not a desire to have a depth of understanding about, where we're coming from as a country, the domestic context within our country, and the messaging of our foreign policy, what it is that we seek to achieve. So I think the timing is unfortunate. And will certainly play into this narrative, but ultimately it is a narrative that is based on a deep misunderstanding of our domestic circumstances, and I think is being utilized for the ends of the Trump administration.
Yeah, the struggle, Chant, to sing them or not to. Looking forward to getting your views on this one. Send us a WhatsApp on 072 1105584 or give us a call on 010-594-6010. Our panel stays with us. We continue on the other side of this. Well, we continue our debate on whether or not, as South Africa has tensions with the US, certainly funding also having been pulled from the country, as relations to continue to see tensions between the two nations. The singing of the song, or the chant, Kill the Boer, is relevant in 2025. Taking your calls on 010-594-6010 or send us a WhatsApp 072-110-5584. This is, of course, after we saw the economic freedom fighters leader Julius Malema as well leading the chant being sung just last week in Sharpeville as they commemorated Sharpeville or Human Rights Day. Let's take Sillo in Pretoria. Sillo, good evening. Thanks for calling.
Good evening, Naledi, and good evening to your viewers.
Thank you so much.
And your panel there. Naledi, just a quick one in terms of the song. I heard what the Professor Tefo said in terms of we are building a nation and so forth. However, my view is, I think this project, is only for a certain group of people, which is black people. We are the one who are pushing for reconciliation. And now there's a problem, like with the song. White people, specifically the Afrikaners, went to the Monument Park with colors that represented, like the apartheid system. And like no one is talking about them. Now there's a complaint in terms of a measure which the matter was cleared by the courts. So I find it, very difficult. I know, like we're at the conundrum with the United States. But this, we have our own judiciary which dealt with the matter, and the matter was cleared. So now this can be an issue. I do support, a building of a peaceful nation in its diversity. However, it cannot only be the project of black people. We have to be honest with ourselves. Everyone must play a role in our diversity. Thank you very much, Nani.
Yeah, Silla, thank you so much for that. Taking more calls on 010-594-6010. Such a succinct point as well by Silla in Pretoria, Professor Ntuli. I mean, he talks about the various races in our country expressing some sort of nostalgia to the old South Africa, but everyone needing to play a role in, so I suppose, shaping a narrative that moves forward. What would that look like? I mean, some fear that it might even be a utopian idea, that we're just not ready to tell a unified story as yet, Prof.
Utopia is part of the vocabulary of hope, the vocabulary, of dreams that we are. We cannot, give up. Now, what my advice would be to Elon Musk. Elon Musk, advise your friend Trump what's happening. We know that there are farms where people are being trained for some war that is going to come, but we have never made an issue out of it. Because we are, so people are simply clear that we do not want to kill anybody, but we want to build a nation that is very strong, economically strong, politically strong, where we are able to find each other. So what I don't like about this conversation is that because it falls into the other hands, other people are going to dig up a lot of other issues that may not be that relevant in this particular thing. Because the aim in here is to bring about black-white doubt, black-white suspicion, black-white anger. And if at all we allow them to do that, if somebody else deliberately provokes it and it does it, then that person must count their political life in 3 fingers.
We're going to take more calls. Thanks for that, Prof. Mokwena is in Bethlehem. Mokwena, good evening. Thanks for calling.
Good evening, Naledi and your esteemed panel.
Sure, thanks for calling. Go ahead.
Yes, Naledi, it is very much surprising to hear AfriForum and other people saying that we mustn't remember the past. It is ridiculous because every time when Elon Musk and Donald Trump are talking, they are always pointing at us and saying that we are, Africa or South Africa is not a country that they want to live in, because I don't want to use the other words when Donald Trump said Africa is a shithole long time ago. But now today they are coming, they don't want us to remember our culture, what happened or transpired to the African masses. And like what happened in Flag Plus, white people were killing and butchering our forefathers and our brothers, and nobody talk about that. Today they are complaining about us singing the song, Kill the Boer, Kill the Farmer. No, that song, we must continue singing it because now it remembers, it makes us to be confident about what the white people did to the South Africans and the Africans in particular. So.
Okay, Mokwena, thank you so much for that. And of course, we do need to apologize for some of the foul language that Mokwena used in that call. And we encourage you that as you do partake in this discussion, let's be responsible and respectful in how we share our views. But Mokwena, of course, sharing his views there. And Professor Otto, perhaps this is where we bring you in and we say, well, I mean, there's certainly the idea of the education and the communication that's necessary. How does South Africa tell the story of some of these chants from a point of view that makes it clear, that explains what these songs mean? I mean, when you've got the Secretary of State of the US taking to X or Twitter to talk about it, is there something that South Africa needs to be saying?
I think there's a broader question around how our messaging of foreign policy is being received. And I think we see that around questions of, our non-alignment, the questioning around whether that is genuine non-alignment or whether that's really just a smokescreen that suits different interests, around our support for multipolarity as well. That there doesn't really seem to be that the messaging that we intend to bring across, that is actually coming across. And I think that obviously then extends into other areas, including our history, our language, our culture. For example, the use of the word colored being considered a slur in the United States, and there not being a understanding of what that means within the South African context. Certainly, there is a lot of work necessary to improve this bilateral relationship, and I think to bring some coherence in our foreign policy messaging that sees that which we intend to communicate is actually what is being received. But if I can just add, I think that it is quite hopeful when we look at recent data that has been released by the US Embassy. By my calculation, it's only 2.2% of Afrikaners that have expressed an interest in this opportunity. And I think at least what I have observed is that there has been a sense that actually, we are in this together. We do want to work together towards the country that I think we all envision for ourselves, one of inclusion and dignity for all of its members. And so I take hope from that we've not been divided and that there is some sentiment for us to move together as a nation towards the future that we envision.
Yeah, hope, such an important word. We're going to take a couple WhatsApps as well, 0721105584 to share your thoughts with us. Let's see some of the texts that have come in from our viewers this evening. Take a look at maybe 3 or 4. Let's see. Zama in Durban says, nobody has ever died because of the song. It's just being made a scapegoat. And why must all concessions come from black people while Afrikaners are free to keep the land, go around making up lies about us, etc.? Why are we always expected to be the bigger person? Nothing we do or say will ever please Afrikaners and Trump. We may as well continue singing to our heart's content. Zama in Durban with that one. Muiselo Jonas in Potchefstroom says, kill the Boers, our liberation song, and whites should not be scared about it. But my question is, when these racist whites sing the apartheid anthem, there's no debate about it. Please leave Julius alone. He does what these radical whites do to undermine the constitution of our country. Let's see. WC in East London says the time for the kill the Boer chant is long gone. Responsible leaders would know that. We know Malema listens to no one, but for the country to move forward, he should stop it. And WC with that one. And Levi says, why play into the hands of Elon? Are you saying we must stop listening to Mzwake's songs or freedom songs? This was resolved by the Equality Court. What more do you want? Cleland Waters et al. Must go to America. Finish. Okay. Levi, thank you so much for that. We're going to take a short break. When we come back, we get the final thoughts from our panelists. To sing or chant? or not to sing and chant on the other side of this. Welcome back. You're still watching Newsfeed PM, the late edition with myself, Naledi Mulao. Still in conversation with Professor Pitika Ntuli, cultural expert and historian, Professor Lisa Otto, associate professor and deputy director of SACHI, chair for African diplomacy and foreign policy at the University of Johannesburg, as well as Benedict Phiri, a legal expert, as we debate whether or not the song Dubulipunu is kind of the word is relevant for us, certainly in 2025 South Africa, particularly in the midst of tensions between Pretoria and Washington. Secretary of State Marco Rubio taking to Twitter as well to raise his concerns and ire around the chanting of the song Dubulipunu by the economic freedom fighters just last week in Sharpeville. Taking your call 01059460110. Zita is in the Val. Zita, good evening. Zita, good evening.
Yes, good evening.
Yes, thank you for calling, sir. Go ahead.
Yes, you know, I think it's time for Julius to stop confusing our society. And also our South African people, they must stop being misleaded by Julius. Julius has misleaded the country for so long. And it's time for men to rest. Why I'm saying that, Donald Trump is trying to show us how Julius was a sellout. Julius, the country is here where it is today because of Julius. They misleaded the country. He's the one who was singing the song of Zuma must fall, save South Africa and all that. He was defending who? On everything that he was doing in the parliament, he was trying to defend who? Julius, there's a lot of things that he needs to be exposed, that Julius is a sellout. Julius is one of the sellouts, co-sellouts in South Africa. They misleaded the country to this far. They killed the Boer. He's trying to take the stand and the legacy of Peter Mokaba. He will never be like Peter Mokaba. We are a youth of Peter Mokaba. We were under Mehan all these times, all these years. We joined the politics in primary. Julius must stop misleading the country.
Okay.
He misleaded the country so far.
All right, Zita, thank you so much. And I need to reiterate that some of these comments are coming directed at the EFF. I need to remind our viewers that we did reach out to the economic freedom fighters to be part of this discussion. And unfortunately, they were unable to join us and did not confirm availability for this interview. Kim is in Kempton Park. Kim, good evening.
Good evening.
Thank you so much for calling. Share your thoughts.
Okay. I think it's very, very bad for Julius to continue singing this kind of a song. It doesn't actually represent us as Black people. And it does take a very small thinking capacity person to see this thing as something that is actually constructive. We shouldn't be talking about such things like this in this day and age. So Julius is actually taking this country backward together with his supporters who are actually supporting this nonsense.
Okay. So Kim, if you were in a crowd and the song was being sung, you would not sing along?
For me personally, are you talking to me?
Yes. You.
No, definitely. I was against this song so long ago. I was against this. Even on Twitter, I was very vocal to say that really we shouldn't be singing this song going forward because it actually makes other people not to be comfortable in this country. So I don't blame them, that race of people, to feel the way they are actually feeling. Whether this song does incite violence or not, it doesn't really make sense in this day and age to sing about it. And around the world, nobody will take time to try to analyze as whether this is right or it's not wrong in South Africa. It's quite straightforward. So it's absolutely unnecessary.
Okay.
And our president should at least say something about it as well, because they cannot just keep quiet as if nothing is actually happening. It's very, very bad. It's very, very sad.
Okay. Kim, thank you so much for calling. Kim in Kempton Park. We need to move towards wrapping this up. And Benedict, perhaps you can help us out with, from a legal point of view, some of the, I suppose, the ribbon at the end of the discussion from your end would be the right to sing it certainly does stand. Do you see the chant facing more legal challenges in the future? But were we to see groups considering the likes of the EFF wanting to go out and sing it, there is no challenge possibly facing them?
Yeah, I mean, and just given the tone and atmosphere that we're in, we have, people in a foreign government at the highest levels effectively undermining our laws. They speak out publicly against our empowerment and transformation laws, and now the latest taking this kill the Boer beyond what the Supreme Court says it is. So I think that's actually quite a serious thing. And it's obviously a reaction to something. And because of where we are, I think we will start to see a lot more of these challenges to aspects such as these. So, but for now, it is Mr. Malema's freedom of expression. as the Supreme Court has ruled, and it isn't hate speech.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much. Benedict Phiri, the legal expert. Professor Otto, your final thoughts. And I think I'm going to give you just a straightforward question. The chant, Kill the Boer, do we continue singing it, yes or no, for the sake of our foreign policy and foreign politics?
I don't really think it's for me to say whether people should continue to sing it or not, but I think certainly it's a difficult message to allow others outside of our country to understand, certainly in a difficult moment in the relations between South Africa and the United States.
Yeah. Professor Ntuli, thank you so much for that, Professor Otto. We really appreciate it. Professor Ntuli, your final thoughts here. You're in a crowd and the song is sung. Do you join in? Do you support the chanting?
Oh, my mother wanted me not to sing. My mother wanted me not to sing in public. But even if I wanted to do so, I'll put my hand, on my mouth. But my parting words is, where is Trump inviting our cousins to? To a land where black lives don't matter. We should never forget, in that part of it, that the war is declared against us because we took a stand against, Israel, because we stood, very, family. I spent, at my studio with more, people, African and all. We are all singing and we are telling, jokes about each other. I remember when I was coming in a few days ago, one of the African guys looked at me and said to me, "Oh, since apartheid went, you even walk differently." So I said, "Oh, you talk very, differently too. Don't take me back." And we'll sit around and we will laugh, because we are interested in life. We are interested in a happy life that we were created to live, that we were promised to us by our God and our ancestors.
Professor Pitika Ntuli, reminding us there of the importance of the slogan that South Africa has given itself, that is unity in diversity. Thank you so much as well to Professor Lisa Otto, Associate Professor and Deputy Director of SACHI. She's, of course, Chair for Diplomacy and Foreign Policy at the University of Johannesburg. Professor Pitika Ntuli, Cultural Expert and Historian, as well as Benedict Phiri, Legal Expert there. Some WhatsApps, let's take a look at those before we wrap things up. TK says the song is currently outdated and no longer relevant to today's political environment. South Africa remains a divided nation. We want to focus on nation building. I think there's a need for political education, both domestic and international. TK, thank you for that. Ronnie says, with the attitude of some organizations like EFF Forum today in 2025, the song is still relevant. This is the song to provoke whiteness, not white people, but whiteness. Ronnie, thank you so much for that message. Anonymous says, as a black person, I don't think singing Kill the Boer changes anything about how we relate to each other, but I see no harm in letting it go for the sake of diplomacy and progress. Our history matters, but so does the future we want to build. Let's say one more. Gladys says, Malema's very impulsive. He doesn't think about the repercussions of his language or actions. He likes to gather popularity from wrongdoings. He doesn't represent South Africans like Afro Forum and Solidarity Movement. South Africans are far better than these minorities who are portraying us badly to the outside world. Gladys, thank you so much for those messages. You can certainly keep them coming in. 872-110-5584. It's Newsfeed PM, the late edition. More news on the other side of this.
There it is. We end the video right here. The second to last comment said that this song is meant to provoke whiteness, not white people. So whiteness is white supremacy. It's the feeling, the demonstration, the flexing of a supremacist attitude. Hope you like, hope you comment, hope you subscribe. I will see you next time.